12th, 2019. It is 6:31 p.m. and we will start with the roll call.
Chair Seiler,
Here.
Vice Chair Christensen.
Here.
Board Member Brejak.
Here.
Board Member Henderson.
Here.
Board Member Hopping.
Here.
Board Member Orino.
Here.
Board Member Rychecki.
Present.
Thank you. I'd also like to welcome Pam Grove. She's going to be our new City Council liaison. And congratulations to your win on City Council, and thank you for joining us. Also like to acknowledge that Noel Mink, Tiffany Hooten. I got it correct. I had this spelled wrong. Hooten. Reed Betzing, and Mr. Malcolm is here joining us also tonight. So thank you, and everyone who has joined, our neighbors who have joined us in person or online. So the next thing is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is review the minutes of our October 10th, 2019 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, Carol.
When I'm reading in the report to City Council section of the minutes, we have several motions that were made to amend a document. And it just says to amend lines 52 to 58, amend lines 19. Then we get down to the very, amend, we actually have remove the term and then change the word eliminate to mitigate. I would like to see something in the minutes, instead of just amend lines 52 to 58, that there's actual language in there, what that change was, so when somebody reads the minutes, they actually know what happened. And it's also a good way for us to check to make sure that the changes that were made in line 52 and 58 are what was actually requested by the amendment. I don't know if I'm the Lone Ranger.
No, I agree with you totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we postpone the vote to approve these until those changes have been made?
Sure. I'll get with Wendy to have these corrected.
I actually will do them.
Oh, you're gonna do them? Okay.
I do the minutes.
Thank you, Wendy. You know,
All right, thank you, Colleen.
I think that's a great idea. There are some action items that we need to get to that we ought to go ahead and proceed on, despite the fact that we're delaying approval.
Right,
Correct.
so then we've got a
It's just a
draft.
minutes, it's not gonna
Right.
impact what we have to do
Right.
tonight.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
Thank you.
then,
just go back to
okay,
and
but then we need to remove the motions that are on the floor.
all right. We can move the table.
Some of the language from the meeting, I may have it in my minutes.
If you do, that's fine, otherwise I can just look at the original document. Generally, when we're doing minutes, we are doing them from what the motion is, and if the motion is to amend line 52, and you're not giving the verbiage, then the minutes are going to reflect, we are amending line 52.
Okay, I'll look back at what I've got, I'll
Okay.
send you, and maybe it'll help,
Absolutely.
save time.
Okay, do I have a motion to table this, or do we just decline it, or
Withdraw.
You just-
withdraw?
Just
Withdraw the motion.
And I'll just put a note in here.
Okay. All right, announcements, I don't have any, okay, at this point now we have public appearances. If anybody is in attendance that wish to come forward and address the board may do so. We ask that you identify yourself with your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anybody who wishes to come forward? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward. Financial report, we do not have the financial report for October. We'll have it next time with the quarterly in January?
Well, I would think it would be in January, we'd have the last quarter of 2019,
Okay.
since we're doing it quarterly.
Alright, well, going forward, we still have it at least given to us in the packet on a monthly basis. We won't review it with you, because I thought we were gonna review it with you on a quarterly basis, but still have it monthly.
If that's what you would like, we could certainly attach it to the packet, yes.
Yes. I think that's what we've been doing, is that we had it there just for us to have it as a, but not as any discussion point, because you're not here to answer questions, you'll only be here quarterly.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Business reports, none, unfinished business, none, so new business. The city council has, whoops. Everything like that. Here's the right page, sorry. So city council, at the last city council, at their last meeting, came up with an amendment on our cooperation and loan agreement. So I would like to have a motion to, accept that this time.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I think this amendment eviscerates this board. And I move to amend that we reject the amendment and pay off the city entirely.
If we do that, that would,
Um,
is there a second on your on Jack's
Yeah, thank
motion?
you.
Sorry.
Okay, I wanna understand, you're amending the main motion to,
Pay off the debt entirely. And, first of all, reject the amendment, pay off the debt to the city entirely, and dispose of all funds back to the city.
So let's,
I'll
I think
second
that's how,
further-
let's
further.
wait, I think procedurally, we have a motion to accept this. If it fails, we'll go for that. Let's talk about the merit, about the amendment as it is. If we do not accept the amendment as a whole, then other motions will be done.
He's got a
Entertain.
motion on the
He
floor.
does, and Carol seconded it.
And I will, for
Okay,
sake of discussion.
alright, any discussion?
Yes. First off, I'm sorry that I couldn't be at our meeting with city council. I was in labor and delivery. There was a period, I won't admit it, but there may have been a time that Emily was resting and I had my phone out and was watching you get grilled.
We felt your spirit.
And I did, was unable to attend the city council study session or meeting. And I did watch those sessions from home, and I was incredibly, for lack of a better word, disappointed by the rigor that city council put forward in evaluating what's going on with LIFT and evaluating the history of the last year. In considering the needs of the urban renewal area that their own study told us existed or did not exist, that city council appeared to be unaware of. Where they surveyed businesses who said, all we care about is what's going on with Columbine Square and the people that we paid to go out, the city paid to go out and say what needs to happen in the urban renewal area, came back and said, save your money, people only care about Columbine Square. And not only was city council seemingly unaware that that study was conducted, the answer that came back was forget about Columbine Square and spend this money on infrastructure. And granted, that was one of the proposals that are not the paths that we suggested in our report. And I did vote to approve the report, not because I think everything in there made a lot of sense or was the best thing, but because, as I said when I moved to approve it, that I thought it was an accurate description of what our possibilities were in terms of the urban renewal area. But at the same time, if there are two things that I thought were missing from city council's discussions, which make me pretty concerned about the direction that we're going in. First, I think the city council showed not much interest in urban renewal versus taking the ability to take shots at the urban renewal board for achieving or not achieving things that we were asked or apparently asked to do, specifically by a liaison who never came to our meetings, in his words, because he found them boring. And he had the opportunity to be here and correct our understanding of things that he said we were misunderstanding, but he wasn't here because we weren't entertaining enough to earn his public service. And so I don't think that the city has shown themselves to be interested in being a meaningful partner going forward. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that their proposal seems to be not a decision to throw full-fledged support behind urban renewal, but to kneecap urban renewal and hope for the best. And in the end, we may be successful, we may not be successful, but they're on the record of sort of washing their hands of it. And I think that's what was primarily accomplished by city council. Going forward, one thing that stuck out to me that I thought was a fair thing to point out, and I'm on board with, was keeping lift around for lift's sake doesn't make a lot of sense. I believe urban renewal is a good tool. I believe that Littleton could really benefit from a robust urban renewal. But I had this sense that that there was a sense of keeping lift around for lift's sake rather than evaluating what the other options are. And one of those, if the city isn't really interested or have the time in supporting the urban renewal board, which I think I recall a lot of reticence to even let us avail ourselves to the staff of the city to get things done because they didn't see that as the role of the city staff, is they could be doing this themselves. There's no reason that we have to have a separate urban renewal authority. I wonder why they didn't consider that more fully. And again, it wasn't our suggestion because we were tasked at the time of what Lyft could do. And there's a big part of me that says, if all we're talking about doing now is some infrastructure projects that either the development office could handle, or if they want to keep the financing mechanism of urban renewal available, city council could handle much more efficiently than the urban renewal authority. I think that's a really important thing for the city to consider. They could be doing the work of urban renewal, avail themselves of the financing without now being a city council that manages a board that manages a part-time executive director, which seems like a very cumbersome, difficult process. Again, I say especially when city council hasn't shown itself interested in really participating in what's going on here. So all that said, I don't know that I would vote against this right now. I honestly came here undecided, so I would probably vote against Jack's motion as it stands right now. And if we did approve this, then I would say, okay, that's the path that urban renewal that Lyft has been given. So I would work for its success as much as I can. But I just have to say that the position that we're in doesn't make a lot of sense to me from a point of view of efficiency or anything else that I mentioned.
Thank you. I concur with a lot of your thoughts. I was out of the country at the time of the study session and watched it after it concluded. After about 15 minutes, I was thoroughly frustrated and turned it off, and I've not gone back to look at it. And I've not watched the city council session either. I watched part of it, but then, I know I have not watched any of it because I was very disappointed, especially when the liaison, who, this board has been, I've been chair for almost 2 years now. We've only canceled one session in the almost 2 years I've been the chair. And if he attended a half a dozen of those sessions, I think we would have been lucky. And it's kind of hard to feel that we have any kind of support from city council if the person they've asked to be the liaison can't make the time of it. When Mr. Hopping was on city council, he was here for every single meeting that I recall. And I think for that, 8 or 9 months that we met, when Kyle was chair, you know, we only had about 7 or 8 sessions before Kyle was elected, and then, things were suspended until, that January, February, when I became chair. So that's been frustrating, and that's actually a conversation I had with the new mayor this afternoon. Anybody else have any thoughts? Jack?
Joe is a lot more eloquent than I, let's put it this way. However, and I get straight to it. And the reason I'm looking at it this way is not only for all the thoughts he had about it, but we got two elephants in the room that we cannot get around. Number one, time is our enemy. We only have 19 years left on this thing. And if we were to take the income that the city said we can have and convert it to a loan today to be paid off in 18 years, let's say, at the current rate of 2.75%, all we can borrow is $1,150,000. That's it. So with city council trying to or not trying, but demanding that they take away part of our capital that we have now in assets, you know, $1 million isn't gonna buy you a lot of stuff. Okay, let's say that down the road, the developer comes in and says, I got this grandiose idea and we're gonna do this, and we're gonna triple your sales tax receipts. So I ran the numbers. I have no clue what the interest rate is gonna be 5 years from now. If I knew that, I would not be here. I would be back in Rio de Janeiro, where I was 2 days ago or 3 days ago. But let's say the interest rates are stable. They stay at 2.75%. We can only borrow $3 million to pay off in 15 years. Now, that's real money, but we have to have a proposal that says that we're gonna expand sales tax 300%. And I'm looking at absorption rates in Littleton right now for retail. They are very, very slow. There's some see-through down at the King Supers on Mineral, and there's, look around Culver and, you know, on Dry Creek and Broadway, it's going in very slowly. So who thinks that stuff's gonna be really hot to trot in our area of Columbine Square? That's our first enemy, first elephant. Second elephant is the election. There's nothing we can do anything about it. We sign a public-private partnership with somebody, we have to go for the voters. Now, if I'm a developer, I'm gonna say, fully on that, probably what I would do if I were a developer and serious is issue metro bonds. And I don't need urban renewal. I've done my own urban renewal. Then I'm gonna pay them off with ad valorem taxes over the course of the 25 years or whatever the law allows. So with those two hurdles, I'm thinking, well, we're not in business to do what we really need to do. And I think it would be, I agree with Joe, it'd be far more efficient for another entity, the city council, to handle this. And I think we ought to make that recommendation to them on the basis that, you know, if you don't like my amendment, is that we really sit down and negotiate First Amendment. Because the one thing, if the city thinks that we should be sitting here as a caretaker unit with a executive director in place and a secretary for that executive director, and money for miscellaneous expenses like transportation and the like, and that we have all our documents in a row, so if somebody walks into, and we have all our letters of agreement, how we're gonna interact with planning and zoning and the building department and city council, which is all that we have to do, because it's all a big mystery right now. That's gonna take us some time to do. And taking away money from us at this point, I don't think is a show of good faith on the part of the city, particularly if we need to have rapid reaction with somebody coming in and saying we want to do something like, because we need to get rid of that blight. That's the one thing. And we don't have the mechanism right now to do it.
So Jack, let me understand, are you saying that the amount of money that they're leaving us with is not sufficient, but you might be in favor of this if they left us more and we should go back and say, 75 isn't enough, we really need 150 and then we can talk, or what, I don't, what are
Well,
you
right
saying?
now, we got $350,000 of blue sky. And you need real money if we're gonna be proactive. Obviously, sitting back like the city council has, and like we have, we got a developer that's just land banking. Do we wanna be proactive about getting rid of blight? Or do we wanna just be passive? Which is better for the city? Would you rather see that land over there vacant without a fence around it? Or would you rather have the fence, the parking lot, and the crumbling foundations there forever? Or would you like to see, if it is vacant, would you like to see some development on it? Even if it isn't commercial development. I'm racking my brain right now about what I see around town and what could be good possibilities there. But I keep coming back to residential. And it's not gonna do us any good. We're not gonna get any sales tax from that. But somebody issuing metro bonds could probably get some ad valorem taxes to pay back for any improvements that are necessary. So we're not a player in that. And I'm thinking, well, why do we exist? And it's my opinion is no reflection on any of us about whether we did or did not do or how long it takes to do anything. I'm looking at the future. That's why I synthesized all of this down to a very simple motion. Or amendment to a motion. That's it. It's the only reason.
So can I ask a further clarifying question? I actually haven't come to a conclusion. I don't have an opinion yet. But so in the document, the council asks us to come back to do the thing where we get an executive director, give back a certain amount of the money, leaving us whatever it leaves us, and I don't remember. But we're supposed to come back with a plan that's been budgeted out and so forth. So a plan to do something. And I think specifically we're supposed to avoid, as you mentioned, Columbine Square. So it means some other kind of using urban renewal plans, something that would be approved of in the urban renewal law, to do some kind of improvement on blight, like maybe one of the various projects like Bill was talking about or what have you. And are you suggesting basically, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying basically any idea we came up with it like that, almost anybody, any committee could come up with like that and spend less money coming up with it. Is that right?
Yes, that is what Joe advocated, and it's what I advocate.
Yeah.
It'd be far more efficient for all the funds to go to the city, and then Public Works do whatever's necessary.
Because they're in the business of coming up with plans to do.
Yes.
And they're
all this
also
kind of
in the
stuff.
business of contracting.
Yeah.
You know, they're in the business of managing construction contracts. I mean, you're in that business, but we're not gonna rely on you to do that.
And to that point, I mean, that was when I started a discussion, trying to move things forward, a year or so ago. One of the things that we talked about is what are the projects, infrastructure projects we can do in that area. I'm still waiting from the report from Public Works as to what that can be. I'm not sure if city staff ever pursued that in earnest. And that's what surprised me, that this is where they want us to go now. When I was told there's really nothing there. That's shocking. I'm also frustrated. I was led under the impression that what would come out of that was an agreement of steps and renegotiating with us, sitting down and coming up together with how this loan may be restructured. I am not really thrilled with this because the way this is done, what it doesn't address is, one of the things we did, and this was one of the first things that I was involved with when I got on the board, was refunding the TIF increment that we had collected and from the 3 urban renewal zones that was repealed. We did not take out any of the money that the previous lift boards expenses had occurred over the 5 or 6 years prior to that. We're doing the same thing with this. We're refunding the sales tax from those areas now, and we're not taking out expenses because it might be a little messy and ugly. And I don't think that's fair when the previous boards worked in earnest on those, an executive director worked on those areas. There were expenses for those areas that was done on behalf of those areas, and they should have shouldered that burden. Now we're gonna push it, kick the can down the road, and we're gonna shove it all onto this one remaining urban renewal area. That gives me heartburn, it does. I was new on the board, I didn't recognize the ramifications, and so, again, when we talked about the discussions I had with the leadership of city council at that time and the city, I was led to believe we would sit down and have a discussion about how this would be structured, not be dictated to us that this is the way it's gonna be structured. So that gives me concern.
Can I ask a legal question?
Which one you wanna ask? We have our attorney here and we have the city attorney. Or toss it out to both of them.
I would
See who
defer
wants
to
it.
Mr. Murray, but
Well, actually, my question's for our attorney then. You made a reference to what needs to go before the public in case of an election. In what cases do we have to take one of our proposals to a public election? And what kind of proposal would not have to go in front of a public election? Or would all of them?
I don't know. I don't have all of the documents that, or the history that over the last couple of years. And I can tell you, from the urban renewal law standpoint, there's really nothing. But as I understand it, there's been a good deal of requirements that have been laid on you by the city.
I know that creating a new urban renewal area would have to go before an election, but
No.
what else is there?
Well, it would have to go before city council, it has to be approved by city council. Now, they may, just from my reading in the newspaper, I know there are some requirements in Littleton that are unusual, that don't exist anyplace else,
and I'll
you can
jump in,
probably
so,
address some of those.
yeah, through a charter amendment, section 64 of our urban renewal measures, was passed by the registered voters in I wanna say 2015.
Special election 2015.
And so any council action that approves or modifies an urban renewal plan has to be ratified by the registered electors of the city. So for the purposes of this, we already have the urban renewal plan in place for this particular area. So if city council does something to modify that sort of what currently is the plan for the Columbine Square area, then that does require a ratification of the electors.
And so a project, and how low does it go? Like a project within the urban renewal area, like, I'm just making this up, like
Sure.
paving an empty lot that we do on.
I think it's more, the basic structure of the initial, if we change the date, let's say we want 25 years.
Right.
And we wanna reset the clock, that would be a change, a fundamental change to the urban renewal.
So what I'm asking is if we decided to go down this path where we have to come up with a plan, we could probably sculpt a plan that did not have to go before the electorate.
Right. You already have a plan.
Right.
There's already a
I
plan.
mean, a project
adopted.
within the plan,
So
basically.
a project within the plan sets out those types of things, the authority that the urban renewal has to pursue any number of different items within the Columbine Square. Whether that's infrastructure improvements, whether that's partnering with a developer for any number of agreements that a developer and the urban renewal authority has to agree to. That's not gonna require going to city council to get approval for that plan or going to the electors. If we decided to or move a whole swath or add certain locations to the urban renewal area, then we start getting into a thing that's gonna require a ratification by the electors of the city of Littleton.
Okay, so
So we have a
in
plan.
theory, if we wanted to go forward, we could sculpt a plan that steered clear.
Project within the
A
plan.
sculpt a project,
Within the plan,
yes,
yes.
right.
That would not
Okay.
trigger anything that would have to go in front of it. But if we
Well,
wanna
that would be a
change the
requirement.
boundaries,
Yeah,
we change the boundaries, we try and change the timelines of, that would trigger it.
alright,
And you might also know that if you changed the plan, it would trigger the requirements of House Bill 1348.
Right.
So the board would have to be expanded, it would,
Change the whole ball of wax.
it would change the whole ball of wax.
so anyway, just to sum up, the thing that the council asks us to do, in theory, could be done. I'm not saying we do it, I'm not saying we go with it, but
Yes,
we could
is what
We
I,
could faithfully do that thing, yeah, without triggering election, okay.
So I have some questions, like I said, I came here undecided, so I had my little thing and now I can ask my questions and make up my mind. You addressed one of them, I think for me, Jack, is okay, what's the actual financing potential for doing this? What can we actually possibly do? The other that's actually new, based on what the chairman said, is what would it actually look like if they're asking us to fund projects within the URA that businesses aren't asking for, that doesn't come from Columbine Square? Because it can't be a process of us going out there, drafting things up and playing guess and check with city council. Do you like this? No. Do you like this? No. What does that process actually look like? How do we work with the city to develop that kind of a proposal?
that's a very good question.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think that, there's been some stuff with the Bellevue corridor study. I would think that unless the city, Public Works has some project-ready proposals out there, which it does not sound like they do, either we or we partner with the city to bring in a firm, and we fund that firm to come in and start fleshing out more of what was in the Bellevue corridor and some of the other highlights of the Envision Littleton, to meet those, what was spelled out in that. We're not gonna sit down and say, well, we think the sidewalk should be X or Y. I mean, that's not what we would do. We would just, we'd have to explore that to the city, okay, how do we do this? And again, that's, part of the struggle I've been having over the past several months is that I don't think, city council understands their role, or, let me say, the former city council, because we have new members on the city council, so I don't wanna throw them under the bus. They don't understand the role and the complexity and the partnership that has to occur for urban renewal to be successful. And that's why about half of the urban renewal authorities are staffed with city council. Because it is such an integral back and forth that has to be a partnership that I don't think we've been experiencing on my tenure.
And that's what I was gonna say, it became clear when we were going through this process, because I went to the study sessions that they had with city council, it became clear that city council really didn't have a good understanding of urban renewal at all. And they had no understanding of the urban renewal plan that they adopted earlier as far as the Columbine Square plan goes. I think they thought, well, we'll get Columbine Square, we'll get the owners to do something and we'll get this all cleaned up and that type of thing. And it was very simplistic if that's what they were thinking. But, just listening to some of them and talking and, they really don't have an understanding of urban renewal and the tools that it has and what it could do. I mean, all they're thinking is developer comes in, they fix Columbine Square, and we don't have blight anymore. They really don't have an understanding beyond that.
I think it is possible, Bill, I interrupt you, but to your point, maybe it does work that, I mean, if we do it, maybe it does work that way. Like maybe we have we have a liaison maybe it's a regular meeting, I mean, I don't wanna drag you into too much, but maybe it's a regular meeting. This is where we think we're going, how does this go? Hey, did you have a hallway conversation with your comrades, you know, what are they thinking? So that, because obviously, you can't actually get to September 2020 and then just present a plan. You're gonna have to have checkpoints along the way to make sure that you're on path. I think it would have to be that way. So you know you're not cruising towards.
And that was a discussion I had with Mayor Valdez this afternoon. We have to have that partnership going forward if this is going to be successful on any level, what they've mapped out today or anything different. And he is open to that.
You know, and I hear what you're saying. I think a couple of things. Number one, when council met with us last spring and said, do something, that's when we actually started doing things and we started getting a lot of stuff done. You know, we had been doing a lot of administrative centering, for lack of a better term, up till that point. And we actually started talking about things that the board could actually do that will result in improvement to the community, which is what our charter is. That's what our job is. That's why City Council put us in the position that we are. I've been disappointed in some of the comments from City Council through the meetings too, but I don't want to confuse that with a change in our charter or what we're supposed to do. We can still fulfill that position. I was disappointed in the liaison, but I don't want us to make a decision because we didn't like our last liaison and he didn't show up at meetings and he never contributed anything meaningful or he didn't liaise. There was no communication whatsoever, and a liaison is not a board participant, as Pam well knows, but you do pass information back and forth, and that never happened. But that shouldn't be a stumbling block for us. That's history. As far as the money, the council was, I felt in the study session, Cindy, you referred to that, and I watched that too. They were reasonably definitive that we should wave goodbye to Columbine Square and let them go. But that's not what it says here. And in talking to council members, it says, as a condition of the loan, List should explore and pursue urban renewal projects, including but not limited to infrastructure improvements, with or without the assistance of property owners within this Columbine Square within the Columbine urban renewal area. So, in my conversations, I asked about that, and they said, you know, let's try to concentrate on stuff we can actually do, the infrastructure approach that Jason referred to. But if Columbine Square picks up the phone, calls us and says, hey, we really want to do something, then we can direct them to community development if they want to use us. That's not totally off the table, but we should concentrate on this other stuff. I think the 2.7 or $3 million that Jack's talking about is enough to do our job and show that urban renewal actually can work for a community. This is money that's not in the city budget, and as council knows, the budget is really tight. The city staff sits there, I mean, Tiffany's right here. How easy is it to pry $3 million out of that budget?
Not at all, it's not easy at all.
Yeah, so we've got the opportunity to provide $3 million in improvements to this city that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get, and show that this mechanism of urban renewal can do something good for the city. And we're not talking about building elages over there. You know, we're talking about some improvements that would be consistent with Envision Littleton, the Bellevue Corridor Plan, that can serve as a template for the rest of the city. And to give that $3 million gift to the city, I think is worth our effort. So I'd be against Jack's proposal. I think I get kind of a chuckle out of a board essentially voting itself out of existence. I think, we've been appointed to council to do something, by them to do something, and they're the ones that tell us what we should or should not do. They've done that here, given us some flexibility, and we have the tools to do it. So let's go ahead and do it. You know, we can try to develop a plan. If we fail, we haven't been far enough down the road to determine that we can't succeed at that. Let's try to do something instead of just saying, Let's not even try. We don't like the way they treated us.
I
We
don't
don't
think
like the
that's,
way they talk.
Bill, I don't think that's what anybody is saying. I think I'm saying, I came into this understanding that they were gonna make a decision on our path forward and they were supporters of urban renewal. What they showed us, and what the history of the last few months have shown us, is they aren't really interested in that kind of a partnership. I believe everything that you said about moving forward and giving the city $3 million, it all sounds fine and wonderful, but it's not going to happen without real affirmative steps of support and a plan for working together from city council, which is not yet present in what they've given us.
I would like to correct the record, if I may. You're overestimating $3 million. That's only if we get 3 times the sales tax collection and we have a 15-year payout.
It's more like one.
Currently, what we could borrow, and a banker is gonna discount us down to 80% of our income. At the current rate of 2.75% for 18 years, we get $1,150,000. We have $350,000 of clear money sitting in our account. So if we give that back to council, but if we don't give it to council, we got $1.5 million that potentially we could get. I'd rather have $1.5 million to do something with than $1,150,000. Being the greedy banker that I am, what can I say?
So once again, are you saying that we should reject this and ask council for more of it?
I think we should, as a negotiating tool, say, we don't like this. Come to the table and let's renegotiate.
I don't ever object to an opening bid. Somebody gives you a contract and you redline it and you send it back. So I mean, it's entirely possible to say, we can't do the job that you're asking us to do with, paying back the money that you're thinking of us paying. And I'm not sure, it's probably worth debating whether we actually need an executive director or not, and I don't know the answer to that question. I do think that they're probably, if this is an opening bid, they're looking for us to give them something back if we were, so we could always say.
I don't think so.
I know.
So I would tell you from my representation of council, that it was at least clear to me as the city attorney that this is not the opening bid. This is not subject to
This came about.
negotiation.
If
This is what they want LIFT to do in order to keep the remaining monies that have been loaned to LIFT, as well as the TIF that has been remitted to LIFT over the last several years while the clock's been running. So,
Are we allowed to ask questions of the liaison? I don't mean to interrupt you at all, but I mean, we're lucky enough to have a.
sure, and Councilmember Grove was not a part of the last council that actually made these decisions.
So,
Sure.
I don't,
And maybe put this in the actual agreement. So the loan is due on December 16th, 2019. It's due on Monday. That's when the cooperation and loan agreement is over. So if there is not action by LIFT, in my opinion, if LIFT doesn't accept what city council has, decided are the proper conditions for a continuation of the loan, then LIFT is obligated to pay back the city the loan agreement, or they're in default. If LIFT pays back the loan agreement, that's the only debt, the only obligation right now that LIFT currently has. So if LIFT has no obligations, no debt, then the remaining TIF that they have collected, the 350 or whatever it is then due back to the city as well.
so that.
So in other words, if we don't approve, we're done.
No, that's not, I don't think that's accurate, because if we don't approve, then we go into default. We still owe the money, and the city can or cannot call it back. I don't think if they ask for it back, we'd pay it back. We're not gonna go to court, obviously, about it. But when I watched, I think that Reed is on point. When I watched that study session, it started out, there were 4 members to 7 who said, let's get rid of LIFT. And the only way that 2 members reluctantly came across the board and said, okay, well, let's keep LIFT, is when they said, let's take their money as well. And then people agreed, okay, let's get on board with keeping Lyft. It was, I don't see a negotiation here, which they don't need to, I grant that, but.
No, fair enough.
We also don't know how lift friendly the new council is, Jim.
Right.
So, you know, I think it's a pretty big gamble to.
So the other thing is, and Reed, you correct me if I'm wrong, we are already in default of the loan because we have not been remitting this increment that we've collected and because no project has come forward. I believe we actually had that discussion with Mayor Brinkman when we met months ago. So that was the interpretation I got from the city attorney. I think you were that at the time. Maybe not, maybe it was Steve.
It's Littleton, so it changes.
No, it was you, cause you referred, I remember we talked about it. We talked about it and we had a phone conversation about it. So we are already in default, we have been in default as long as I have been on this board.
I'd throw in it's possible, I believe, something like that. Just assume that you heard that. Yeah,
So, you know, again, I have some heartburn over several things in this agreement. It did not go down the way I was told it was gonna happen. I think it was rushed so that the last city council could check it off their list of things that they accomplished. I am not adverse to going back to the mayor and city council and we say, we need to have further discussions on this. Because I think there's some things that, you know, that should be left on the table. Yes, Carol?
I spent a lot of time studying this, comparing it, going back to the plan, and I think complex is a good way to describe it. There's so many things that have happened over the course of Lyft in the last 5 or 6 years that complicates this matter in a way that's almost too tangled to untangle unless we sit down and really go through it. I can't support the loan agreement the way it's worded today. I can go through and I believe there are contradictions in this loan agreement with the plan. And I need our attorney to sit down and go through it with us to make sure that we're not signing something that is not in agreement with the plan that we're supposed to implement that was approved by council. That's what our charge is, to implement the plan. I don't see Lyft or any urban renewal authority exists to do projects that are 50,000 or 150 or even 200,000. It's a body that's supposed to go in and create development where no development's gonna happen because of the existence of the blight, and you need the private or the public money to go in to make that project come to fruition, because it just wouldn't happen without the infusion of public money. So if we do something, we're talking about doing something that's gonna cost millions of dollars, not 50,000. The idea that we're gonna start taking on infrastructure projects, and you're absolutely right, we asked staff twice to give us infrastructure projects over there, and they've told us they didn't exist. So now it is a surprise that infrastructure is the road they want us to go down, but we have a public works department that knows how to do that. And they can do it better than we can. They don't have to hire an executive director who's gonna have to hire a project manager. We're gonna waste a lot of money doing what the city could do much better and probably more efficient and at less cost. So that doesn't make sense to me. The sales tax increment right now is really the only money that we have. And that has to be appropriated annually by our city council. So I don't know of many lenders that are gonna want to take us on knowing that that money has to be appropriated for the next 18 years. And there's no guarantee that it will be. So a council 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 10 years from now could say, sorry, we can't appropriate that sales tax increment we've got other things within our budget that we need to take care of. So you're not gonna get the increment this year. So that's an obstacle, and I don't think council, I'm pretty sure the old council didn't understand that. I don't know about the new council. I feel like we're being asked to just do busy work. And I don't think that's a good way to use volunteer time. We have resolution that was passed by this authority in 2015 that has told our taxing partners, we will not keep property tax increment until there's a project. And we've not lived up to that. So that's, to me, another one of the complex issues that we have to deal with, that we haven't. This doesn't impact us, but I think it's something that we need to think about, is the fact that we've got Resolution 88. Our council has said they will not approve a project without the full support and approval of all the taxing entities. I don't know that council understands that. So I see all of these little different problems out on the table, and nobody's really tried to figure out how it all goes together. We have a plan without a project. I don't even know if a developer would, what the course of action that developer would take. Do they go to community development and through the planning commission and city council for approval and then come to us and ask for money? Or do they come to us first and invest all that time and effort on a project, go to planning commission, and then hope that the council approves? I mean, to me, these are real obstacles that need to be fleshed out. We need to know what the lay of the land is so we can tell a developer what the steps are required and how we all play together, work together. And when I've read the plan twice today, I've read it several times, but every time I read it, you read it with a different lens when you're faced with a decision. And the partnership that is addressed in the plan that we're supposed to have with the city of Littleton, we do not have. And we haven't been set up to succeed in any way. And in my mind, the only real blight that we have in that whole urban renewal area is Columbine Square. And if we really want to be an urban renewal authority, I think we need to take the bull by the horns, and we need to sit down with our attorney and understand what our options are. What can we do? Do we need to put the screws to the owner of Columbine Square? Is there something that we can do instead of sitting here twiddling our thumbs waiting for the phone to ring? But without those kinds of conversations with our attorney, and then the partnership, and maybe we need to sit down with city council and understand what the plan is actually asking us to do, so that we all are on the same page. I can't approve this. I think we ought to table it until we can get some of this other stuff taken care of and understood.
This is all going back and reinventing the wheel again. I really think this is a reflection of a decades-long battle against urban renewal, what you're saying there. And I don't think, we've been through a lot of that. We've worked through a lot of these issues with our attorneys. We kind of know what our game plan is, what we can do, what we can't do. And to go back and revisit a lot of this stuff is a delaying tactic. I think that, we know that our Public Works Department does not have any money, as Tiffany kind of confirmed that it's not in the budget. Furthermore, the city can't leverage money. We can. And this is not a toy thing.
But here's the other part of that. Well, let's talk about the leverage.
It's not much, but it's there.
What came out of the Bellevue corridor is multiple millions of dollars to implement. I had that conversation with the firm that did that. You and I talked to him about that. And how do you leverage, let's say we find a way to bond $1 million to do these things. And it's 12, 13, $20 million to do that infrastructure where that looks really great on paper, you know, on that PowerPoint. You know, we can't do that. You're not gonna get anything from it. So that's what the other part I'm questioning is, even going down that pathway, what are we gonna be able to accomplish? And you know, what is, I don't have a clear vision from, like, again, this whole thing just felt very rushed. I think, you know, we put a lot of work into trying to come up with some plans. I think we did a fairly good job in the time frame we had. But again, you know, and then, you know, we worked with joining with the city to go back to the owners and saying, what do you need here? And everybody almost said, what's happening with that big vacant lot to the north? And then city council ignores the property owners, ignores the community, and says, oh no, do this. When that's where, and that, I have problems with that. I mean, cause I've talked about, we've gotta do a project that benefits the community and the property owners, the business owners. I'm not sure that does it. Carol?
Bill, I'm at a loss. I don't know what it is that we can and can't do. And the idea that what I might be suggesting is a delay tactic, I think it's just the opposite. I think we have been delayed because we haven't gone and really tried to tackle this problem. We seem to be talking all around it, things going, you know, with the previous council behind, outside of the meeting of the whole group. So we haven't really worked together as a real group with a common understanding of what it is we can and can't do. And you said something that triggered me with the Columbine Square and
The survey?
the infrastructure project, the city may not have it, but it doesn't mean that we can't turn over our money to the city to do that infrastructure project rather than us trying to manage something like that. They just can do it more economically than we can.
I have a question. If city council reconstituted the board and acted as the urban renewal authority themselves, would that trigger the amendment to the urban renewal law that would require growing the
Changing the
board?
plan.
Actually, they have to have a vote of the people to make that decision. They can do it by law, but the voters have to ratify. Which is certainly something they can do.
Sure.
I wanna throw in my 2 cents. I'm still confused about what our process is. You may remember all those wonderful, colorful line diagrams I put together. And you know, I just don't know how it all works. And I think we need to get that. I mean, to me, not having an executive director that can work during the course of the month with all these other entities is something that we have been missing. I still look at the board and remember when I said that Carol shouldn't be doing the minutes, we should have somebody else do the minutes. I still think members of this board should act as members of the board and either approve or disapprove what staff does. We really don't have any permanent staff, and about the amount of money that the city wants to leave us with, we'll hire half an executive director.
Well, I'm nervous about just saying no to this and throwing it in front of a new council. I think we run a very real risk of it going the wrong way. It almost went the wrong way before.
What is the city, excuse me, what is the city gonna lose if we don't exist?
Jack, they're gonna lose, like I say, the ability to leverage the thing. We would focus on trying to define what the Bellevue corridor can look like, just a piece of it. We're trying to set a template. You know, once again, you're talking about talking yourself out of a job. We have been charged with a responsibility, and that's what we should go do. You know, instead of just saying, we don't like
But I
the
also
structure.
don't think it's responsible when we're the ones who have spent more time with urban renewal than they have, and we receive a recommendation that we think makes our charge more difficult to achieve, or that it just won't be achieved for whatever reason, that we don't go back to them and communicate when that's the issue. But to accept it as it is, I don't think is responsible either.
So what if, and I'm not gonna make this a motion at the moment, but it's just for the thought process. what if we approve this with it incorporated in the motion that we're very concerned about the amount of money we have and that we would, we need to revisit the budget that we have remaining at the end of 6 months. And it may be that we need, and I agree with you, we need an executive director, and they've asked us to do that. Maybe we get in there 6 months down the line and we say, look, this is costing us more, we're making good progress toward a goal that you set for us here, but we need more cash. There's nothing in here that says that we can't borrow more money. All it says is this is what we're asking back now. But the parts of the agreement are still in there that we could go to council and say, we need more money, we need to borrow more money.
May I say something? I just wanted to note, my reading of it, was more, taking the position of the council, putting myself in the mindset of the council as I understand it. I can read it with a great deal of goodwill. It's like, okay, you guys came to us with a couple of options, and now we're gonna give you another 9 months to come back with a fleshed out proposal that amounts to option 2, although we're taking away a lot of the money. Probably to satisfy some people so that you have the breadth to do that. It's not a crazy thing to ask where they're like, we're extending your deadline to come back with a more fleshed out proposal now that we've sort of tamped you in one direction as opposed to another. So the real question is, to me, is do we actually think that we can come up with a proposal that will be satisfactory? You know, and I hear some of you guys saying, I don't think so, whatever. But that's what it is. I don't think it's a hostile document itself. I think they're just asking us to come up with a plan. And if we did come up with a plan, it actually would have, our first thing would have to be a plan with ourselves and with council, going by 6 weeks from now or 10 weeks from now, let's have all of our candidates lined up for what we're gonna do, and then let's pick one within 18 weeks, and then let's start drilling into it or whatever. But it's not crazy.
Well, I take exception to that because I don't even think, city council knew we would be meeting the second week of December.
Yeah.
After they adopted this, after we may have met last month.
Yeah.
Tonight, it's on the agenda to talk to the HR department to help us through that process.
Yeah.
I doubt that the city of Littleton hires anybody within 3 months. And they want us to have someone in place February 1st. That's not gonna happen. And again, it almost, to me, when you put that in there, you put something, it's like, are they setting us up to fail? Are they pushing it on to the next council to make the decision whether to pull the plug? I think we can talk about history. When the city council that was in place 4 years ago repealed the 3 zones.
Yeah.
They hampered the ability of this board to do anything. And then you had the mass exodus of the people who knew what was going on, who had urban renewal experience, just go. And we talked about this when we met with them, saying that's been a challenge that we've all had, and we've tried to wrap our heads around this and learn as fast as we can. But we're all volunteers. This isn't a full-time job for us. Some of us are having kids. Some of us are.
They won't stop.
That's the only project we've managed to complete.
And this is a volunteer board, and they were talking, that's what it's like, we were being paid, and we've been sitting on our butts. There's been some work we've done, and it's been very challenging. And there's still a lot of administrative stuff that if tomorrow Columbine, if the owners of Columbine Square wake up and say, you know what, the stars have aligned, the planets have aligned, we're gonna do something today, and we want urban renewal, to Jack's point that he's been bringing up for 6-9 months, we're really not ready to deal with that. And city council's not ready to deal with it. We don't know, to your point again, is what is the process? And we need to have that discussion. That was part of what we need to talk about. But they basically just dismissed all that and said, don't even pursue that. And again, it bothers me when the business owners and property owners are saying to them, this is our biggest concern. That's the elephant in the room. And that still really isn't what they want us to deal with. That's not what I've been preaching the past 2 years. Go ahead.
So yeah, I agree, it probably was not hostile. I think it was not well thought out, but even though it wasn't hostile, also was not collaborative. And we require them to be collaborative with us going forward. So I would hope that they would embrace a spirit of collaboration rather than the approach that they've taken here. With that, I mean, I don't think it makes sense to approve this as written. But I would be open to a solution where we go back to them with a request, while at the same time begin taking whatever steps we can in good faith toward the general vision that they've given to us. I don't know what that would look like, but keep the conversation going and begin moving.
Cheryl?
I remember the point when you were talking about Columbine Square, which is to me a real important, that Columbine Square is about the only project over there that we are going to be able to be involved in, that's going to create property tax increment. And that's what we need to do, these little projects with sales tax. That's just one-time revenue paying for a one-time expense. It's not going to pay off a project that's going to create more value over there that in turn pays off the debt. So I think we need to focus on that one parcel, which is the one that they've told us to kind of turn a blind eye to. But I think what we ought to do is write a letter to the council and let them know that, first of all, you've made the point that you thought we were gonna sit down and negotiate this together. And that we would like to do that. And we're trying to act in good faith, but the timing element has not worked in their favor or ours. And see what we can do to sit down after the first of the year and negotiate this eyeball to eyeball. And table this thing until a point in time where we have had that discussion with them, or if we've had some response to their letter. But you made the point earlier, we've been in default of our loan agreement since it was originated, so I mean, what's another month or 6 weeks going to do? And I would also point out that this loan agreement has eliminated the other $50,000 worth of the line of credit that we were given in the very first place, which I think there's a message in there. I'm sorry.
I guess I would say, just because Chairperson Seiler brought this up earlier regarding the default. So the language in question was that repayments shall be made by LIFT to the city annually before December 31st of each year, or by mutual agreement, but final payment no later than December 16th. So it's that shall be making repayments. You know, when this loan and cooperation and loan agreement was originally drafted back in 2015, I think there were 4 urban renewal areas in effect. I think everyone, well, certain persons were optimistic that, you know, we were gonna be able to issue bonds, LIFT was gonna be able to issue bonds, there were gonna be projects coming in, and that never happened. So I don't think that when this cooperation and loan agreement was originally drafted, there was ever probably a contemplation that there would be this line of credit that LIFT would have been using. And so I don't think a lot of the terms were actually fleshed out very well. So for example, this last sentence, and it's in 3.1 if you know, for you at home with your cooperation and loan agreements. But it never defines what those repayments are. So what are those repayments? Are they $1, 50 cents? Doesn't say. Is it half a loan? Could be anything. Or it says, or by mutual agreement. So I think city council has been aware, I know that LIFT has been aware that there has been some obligation to make some arrangements of repayment. That hasn't been called in necessarily by the city. So I don't think the city has ever formally by resolution ever adopted anything saying, we don't need the $5 from Lyft this year or whatever it is. So technically, yeah, that would be the section within this cooperation and loan agreement that has not been followed.
Well, I agree with Carol's assessment. It would be nice to table this and pending further negotiations with the city. Now, I'm looking at negotiating by saying, no, we reject it. And if the city really wants us, they'll come back and say, oh, no, you can't do that, can't do that. We'll talk about it. That's why I came up with my motion. It's basically because I think that the First Amendment is doesn't solve the problems of the original cooperative agreement, and it creates more problems for us. Carol brought up a good point. Annually, the city council has to appropriate the funds to us. That's why we're gonna get a discount on our income stream. That's why I really wanna keep like $350,000 sitting somewhere that in case the city council decides one year not to give us the money, we got the funds to pay what the third-party lender. They're not gonna be as nice to us as the city is.
If I may, that raises a question I have for Tiffany. Have there been, because I don't recall us getting a payment, because the first year I was chair, I did not make a deposit of sales tax increment. This is the first year I have made a deposit for sales tax increment from the city. What happened to that increment in, this is 19, it would have been in 18. Did we not get it, or?
No, the city has appropriated and paid the lift for each year that sales tax increment is due.
Did you just do a deposit for us rather than?
I would have to go back and
Yeah,
look.
Cause
I don't recall.
I had to handle it this last time, and cause we had a discussion, okay, what account I should put this in, and, we talked about that, but that's the first time I've done a deposit
We
in
might have
almost
direct
2 years.
deposited in the past, I
Okay.
can't recall, I could go back and look, but yes,
Okay.
the city has paid every year the increment that is due to a lift for sales tax.
Okay. Because the other thing with Jack, if let's say we do some infrastructure, whether it's the intersection or sidewalks or whatever, and we bond that to get enough money to do whatever it is. If the city does not guarantee that they're gonna pay that every year, we're not gonna be able to bond it. So again, are we being set up, are we really gonna succeed then at what they want us to do? Do they understand that if that's the route they want us to go and we pursue that, that's gonna be the commitment they're gonna have to do, is say, this sales tax increment will be guaranteed.
That's part of the deal, though. I mean, that's.
Well, that's
I
not,
think
we don't
it's
know
a
that.
pretty
I
simple
don't-
thing.
It
Again,
has to be
I don't,
appropriate.
given the discussions that and again, after 15 minutes, I had to turn it off. I don't think they do understand. I don't think the former city council understands, and with the 3 new members, I'm not sure they fully understand that.
That's why we have a city attorney, that's why we have a finance director, is to help get that part. That's part of the de facto function of a lift board, is that, that increment is collected and it goes to the lift board. That shouldn't be a big issue. I just think this is a huge gamble, because if you look at the change in council and who's left from the old council were some of the more wobbly members in that meeting where this went through in the first place. I think to go back to them, and when they've got a lot of stuff on their plate to begin with, and have to start a whole learning curve about urban renewal, makes it easy to say no. And they just close the door, we walk out. So I think it makes the most sense to, approve with some kind of an acknowledgement that this is a super tight budget that increases the chances that we are not going to be able to attain the goals that the city council set for us when they set up urban renewal. And that we may very well need help partway through the process, but start the process. We're sitting here trying to anticipate what's gonna happen way down the line. And we have people that are saying, this sounds pretty hard, I don't know we don't know what the future holds. Of course we don't. Did you know if you were gonna have a boy or a girl?
Once I
You
found
did?
Once you found out, but, we don't know what's down the line. But, I think it's a huge gamble to go back to city council and say, you know what, we want you to add something to your plate because, we're not feeling real good about the way this got negotiated. I don't care for it either. I think we're shortcut.
Yeah,
To Jay- Joseph.
I think it's, the city had engaged with us for months talking about eventually quote unquote negotiating this agreement. That is what we anticipated when we first met in the spring. You had various touch points with the mayor where we talked about renegotiating. The city council made a decision, intentionally or not, just because of the timing, not to negotiate. I don't think it's inappropriate for us to go back and say, hey, we have more information that may make a better agreement than the one that you prepared for us, and we thought we would have the opportunity to negotiate. The city council then has one of two options to say, no, we don't want to, we're gonna close the door, and you're right, that's a real possibility. The other one is to say, no, keep this. I guess there's three possibilities, and we get to come back and reevaluate it. And the third possibility is, forgive me, but to be a little bit grown up about it and to talk about it with us, the way they said that they were going to do for a number of months, but haven't done yet. And in one of those situations, they're not acting in good faith, and I think that would make it clear, but it would be their decision, their prerogative to shut the door on urban renewal. I don't think it would be our fault simply for the fact that we decided we would take city council at their word and try to renegotiate an agreement they said we would renegotiate. But if they wanna close the door, that's again, their prerogative. But I don't see, if that's what they wanna do, then fine, but I don't think that we can just approve it and hope for the best either.
Any further discussion?
We ready to call this?
Go ahead, read.
Go ahead.
No.
I was just gonna say, we have, obviously, city council has 3 new members on it. For those who were able to actually watch that study session in which the old council debated the terms of the renegotiated loan agreement, it was very close. In terms of not calling in the debt. So, I think you're all very, very smart to consider whether, what this means for Lyft if you have to go back to a new board who, I don't know, I have not had an opportunity to speak with any of the new council members regarding urban renewal, so I have no idea what their thoughts on urban renewal are, but it is somewhat of a risk in certain circumstances.
But I would say the point of my serving on Lyft is not to keep Lyft alive.
Sure.
And the new board might have a very different position on Lyft. I'd rather find that out now than September. After another however many months of banging my head against a wall every other Thursday night with all of you. But I do have two questions, just, I don't know if we're gonna end discussion, but really quickly, I did one text question, section 2.2, the very end of it for the lease amendment. I was unclear on the language, the last sentence, any collected tax revenues not necessary or used to pay obligations of Lyft during the current fiscal year shall be returned to the city by the end of last quarter following such fiscal year. Is that meaning to refer to the end of the year of that fiscal quarter or a year later?
I believe the intent was for a year later.
Yeah, so let me give you an example. So currently, according to the amended terms, the city is required to remit the sales tax increment to Lyft by March 31st, essentially. Let's say it's 2020. This statement here says that it will give you until the December 31st of 2021 to use those funds. Because the issue in the past has been, it's not feasible for you to get money in by March 31st and then reasonably expend it by the end of the following quarter. It just wasn't enough time. If you have debt payments, maybe they're not annually, maybe they don't fall under the terms of the repayment, and so that was kind of allowing an extension on that repayment.
Yeah,
It really came into play when the other 3 urban renewal areas were in effect because their payments were in November. And according to the agreement, they would have to be repaid within 4 months. And that wasn't feasible.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question based on what you just asked? I am a little still confused. Are you saying that any collected tax revenues not necessary or used to pay the obligations of Lyft during the current year, let's say 2019, shall be returned by December 2020?
Yes.
But it's saying that that money needs to be used to pay the obligations of 2019,
Not necessarily 2019.
but that's what it says.
I don't think,
It says necessary or used to pay obligations during the current fiscal year. So it's saying anything that's not necessary or used during the current fiscal year of 2019 shall be returned the last quarter of 2020. And in my mind, I wondered why it is that we would hold on to money for so long for a debt for 2019 in that example. I mean, we know what our obligations are in 2019. Why don't we pay them and be done with it? And then anything that's left over gets returned. I don't see any reason to hold on to it for a year.
yeah, I can
That's the way I
understand.
read it.
Maybe we could just hear from everybody.
Mr. Murray, do you have anything to add in your review of the amendment or the discussion?
Nothing from a legal standpoint. I'd really need a lot more background in terms of how this is transpired. And we'd definitely like to look at the urban renewal plan that you have, and would be happy to give you some ideas based on my experience. From a legal standpoint, I can't really, there's nothing here that's not appropriate.
Carol?
I happen to agree with you that we're not going to be able to hire an executive director by the date that they've given. So we're gonna be in default of this thing no matter what.
Yes.
I would rather take our chances up front with a new council. I mean, we haven't.
So
think
we have
we
two
tried.
motions on the table. We have the original one, and then we have the second one of Jack's. We'll call on the second one, which is to pay back the entire loan. Correct?
Correct, and dispersal of remaining funds to the city.
Okay. We'll go by roll call, please.
But, you know, it sounds to me though that there might be, I'm getting the sense that we'd rather, renegotiate this thing.
Can I
So
just
let's
point
vote
out
your motion down.
one thing to answer Carol's last question about the executive director? Language says unless otherwise agreed, so in theory, if it was taking more time, I know this is not what everybody's really focusing on, but if it were taking more time, we could agree with the
They would
council.
agree, they would, that's already been discussed, and that the mayor has indicated that that would not be an issue, as long as we keep working in good faith to move that forward.
We have our human resources director here. Maybe you have a comment. Could we get it done by then, or?
I think that if we weren't in the holiday season, we could do that. We have hired in less than 3 months, but we won't get the applications we need with the holidays. I mean, really, people start applying again second week of January. I'd imagine maybe you would get 1 or 2 kind of trickling in over not Thanksgiving, Christmas and the New Year, and it's right upon us. So we would lose about a month, I would say, of candidates coming in. And and my recommendation, I'd say that's something that we would be monitoring very closely, knowing we have that deadline. And it's reasonable. It's not like it's just the city of Littleton that no one's gonna apply to. I mean, applying in general really goes into a very much a slowdown. So it would be difficult, but I do think that there is factual basis to, if you wanted to ask for an extension, that certainly I could draft something or help in any way that I could to explain that.
And would it be reasonable that request for an extension would be separate from approval of this document? Or should it be incorporated? I mean,
Well, the current language itself says unless otherwise agreed to, correct?
Yeah.
So I think.
between who? Between the applicant and the human resources department, or between?
It wouldn't
Most likely.
matter, the,
Most likely between city council and LIFT,
Okay.
extending that conditional.
Okay, so that could be after the fact of approval of this.
Is there some reason that you're going through a hiring process rather than looking for somebody to function that way under contract?
That's gonna be
It's
part of the
open.
discussion
That's
because that's what it's gonna be. We're gonna, it's not gonna be a full-time position as the current job description is laid out. There's no way we can afford that. There's not enough work. That's what the LIFT board had 4 years ago. They had a part-time contract individual, and that's what we're going to discuss.
I think you could get somebody under contract that knows, is familiar with urban renewal on a fairly short time span. There are people out there that could do that sort of, do what I think you're looking for, which is really strategic planning. And giving you some advice in terms of what you can do, how you can do it, and how to move forward. And that can be done pretty quickly.
My fear is it'll take just as long as it took to get an attorney. That is my fear.
Well, I think that if we do not approve this as drafted, one of the steps we can continue to advance is the hiring of the executive director according to the timeline that's in here. And we may need to be communicative about that.
Okay,
Should we vote?
So-
Jack's motion?
on Jack's motion,
It's an amendment to the motion.
amendment to the motion, sorry.
can we repeat what the motion was?
To basically, yes, sir.
I mean, I'm looking at it in terms of, the motion that was made was to approve the first amendment to the cooperation and loan agreement. It was first and seconded. The amendment is not really an amendment to approve.
Right, it's
It
to,
just changes it all.
Change the
Just
word
change
to
the
wording
wording.
from approved
It's
to
really
not
more of it's a separate motion, not really
It's
an
an amendment.
I know what you've called it,
Yeah.
I'm just
but it's
saying,
not really amending it, it's
because what your amendment is to reject it and to repay everything.
That's it. My motion is really to change the wording of the original motion to
But that's
Read
not an
such.
amendment to a
You can't.
motion.
So in theory, just to play out the scenarios,
Do
one
we
scenario
need to, or
is,
can we just?
with Jack's, we could say no, and then you
No
could
comment.
move again,
Yes.
you could vote against approving.
yeah.
And then you could move again about repayment and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to dictate to you, I'm just saying.
So let's
different
call the
scenarios.
motion.
Jack's motion.
Jack's motion, amendment to the motion, to the original motion. Could you please, by roll call, please?
Chair Seiler,
No.
Vice Chair Christensen,
No.
Board Member Breezak. No. Board Member Henderson.
No.
Board Member Hopping,
No.
Board Member Marino,
No.
Board Member Rychecki.
yes.
The vote is 6 in opposition, 1 in favor, the motion fails.
Okay, now to the,
I would like to make a motion to amend the main motion that we table the decision on this loan agreement. We authorize the chair to write to the city council to express our desire to negotiate, and that just, what we've discussed here, the timeline has been rushed. We thought we were going to be able to negotiate. We were not asked. We'd like to have a meeting with council to see if we can't work through this in a fashion that works to the benefit of both groups. And then return to this at such time after you have heard back from council. I don't know that we can do a date certain, but
Then is your amendment just to table?
Table and
table and tip
authorize.
and
Authorize
table,
me to
authorize,
communicate
and we'll
our
come back
desires.
to it. I don't want it to be forgotten or indefinite or anything like that, but after you've heard and done what you need to do with the mayor, come back with the response and then proceed from there.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? What I'd like to see, the amendment say is that we table this and we ask for a joint session, either study session or full session, a study session with city council to discuss and renegotiate the loan. That's really what we want.
I agree with that. I do think a letter, perhaps drafted by our council would be appropriate, just so that it's written and a matter of public record what we're asking for. Because there's been a severe disconnect in terms of what we've been talking about and how what we've been talking about has been described. And I want it written, just so they know what we're asking for and not messed up through a chain of telephone.
So we're discussing the amendment. So I have a question, so that would mean if we would table this, I mean, the date is what, the 19th? So, okay, so,
16th when it's due.
okay, so then we're in default, basically.
Correct.
Okay, so
Apparently.
We've been in default all
Yes.
along.
so
I mean, I don't know, what is default?
well, I
Well,
don't
I'm
know,
just saying,
I don't know what
I'm just saying it's not my
happens.
place to decide if I'm in
What
default,
happens
just
if we're in
apparently.
default? I mean, what happens if we're in default, we don't make the 16th day?
It'll be up to council.
Well, there's nothing set forth in the cooperation and loan agreement that talks about what happens at the termination of the agreement. There's no definition of what default is according to the cooperation and loan agreement. I would assume that city council could pursue whatever legal remedies is available to city council to get the money back. Leave it at that.
And I would imagine if it did, then that would be their decision and we would give the money back.
That's right.
And that's
And that would,
They're asking
that
for money now.
would answer the other part of this issue.
right.
I have a point of order, just a question, just because I'm always confused by Robert's Rules of Orders. Is it, no disrespect, is tabling the right way to do this, or would it be, or are we rejecting the original motion, having your conversation, and then we could redo the original motion if it failed? Would that be-
I would argue that tabling is not an amendment.
Right.
Right.
So it's a motion to, okay,
It's a
a
separate
motion to
motion,
table
so
rather
you
than
would-
to amend the
you would
main
have to
motion.
vote
It's
Then we
just
have a
down the-
motion, what our next
a
step
motion
is.
to table.
But that's not an amendment, so we have a live amendment on the table.
But if I want to table that amendment or that motion,
You're gonna have to wait
I
and
can't
see.
do it until after it's voted on.
Right. So
That needs
if
to
we
be made
know
now.
as a group, since we're all talking to one another, that that's what we're gonna do, we first have to vote on the original motion, if I'm understanding it correctly. We first have to vote on the original motion, which we could always remove,
You can vote
move
down,
if we wanted to, if the tabling failed as well.
you could vote it down, you can make a motion to table, vote on that, if that doesn't pass, we can always make the main motion again.
That's right.
Because tabling isn't an amendment.
I think that if we want to, what I'm hearing, if we want to advance the conversation of what's next apart from accepting this and moving on, we have to vote the original motion down and then reopen the conversation regarding what you just suggested.
It may be
So
cleaner.
why do you, how do you use a motion to table?
You move to table.
Okay, but if you move to table, at what time do you do it? It would seem to me you can only move to table a motion when a motion's on the table.
Actually, I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I will give you the answer. You can move to table a motion at any time during the discussion.
Okay.
And it takes precedence. If it gets a second, then there's an immediate vote on
Yeah.
whether you're gonna table or not. There's no discussion.
Okay, there's no discussion.
Gentlemen, we have an attorney. in
So
the
we
room
have,
that-
No, yeah, I
Actually-
know
actually-
I know Robert's
act
rule of
like,
order,
Yeah.
believe
So
me.
then,
we have a motion on the table.
We have a motion to table.
To approve this, and then I've made a motion
To
to
table.
table this until such time that we have.
It's just a motion.
it's a motion
I
to
do want
table.
Chairman Seiler to tell us what we're voting on and ask us to vote and then we'll move on.
Okay, we are voting on the motion to table
Okay,
the original motion. And then we'll talk, we can have a motion, entertain a motion after that on our next steps. So roll
Is
call,
there still-
please.
Is there still discussion on this?
There's no discussion on the table.
No
This is on
discussion on
table.
table.
Chair Styler,
Yes. I didn't think about what.
Vice Chair Christensen,
Yes.
Board Member Brijak,
Yes.
Board Member Henderson,
Yes.
Board Member Hopping,
No.
Board Member Marino,
Yes.
Board Member Rychecki.
Yes.
Passes 6-1.
Is there another motion regarding the agreement, the
Yes, I move that that the board authorizes the chair to write a letter communicating to the council the hopes of the board to renegotiate the agreement with the council, spelling out whatever, and we're authorizing you to express those wishes.
So is the concern the money? Is it just the money? Are we focused on the money? Or are there other issues in here?
Wait a minute, there's a motion before we have discussion.
Okay.
We have a second.
Second.
Discussion, Mr. Hopping.
Is the money the concern? That's what I hear, is that people are concerned that they've taken too much money, or are there other issues?
I think money is a concern for me, especially when I hear, I mean, Jack's kind of our authority on, you know, here's how much money, I mean, we'll get maybe $1 million, you know, and that's not gonna really work for us, so to me, the money is a problem, I mean.
Point of order. Are we able to go into executive session to discuss negotiating this agreement with city council?
Yes.
And is that,
Do it anytime.
Sure.
I'll move so we can discuss it, but I move that we move into executive session.
Okay, we need to cite the law. Reed, do you have one?
We've also amended the executive session law for the city of Littleton, so let me.
But that's for the charter, but
From-
we're not
from the
bound
charter.
by it.
Yeah,
No,
that's true.
We're under state law for that.
We're bound by the state law.
Instruction to negotiators.
Is that obstruction?
Obstruction to negotiators.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know if we're to the point of instruction to negotiators yet, but I know that we're talking about what our letter will say and what our intention is and what we'll hopefully they'll see and agree to or not agree to. Not that we have anything to hide, but I think it'll just make it easier conversation.
So how do we move to go into the executive session? Motion?
Joseph's made the motion, but he needs to cite the statute that allows us to go in with our.
Well, I'm not your attorney, but I would say most likely it's a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 24-6-402 for the purposes of.
Wait, I can't, unfortunately can't give you the preamble off the top of my head.
I can't imagine that you would actually have to cite it. I mean, as
you
long
need-
as you said pursuant to Colorado law.
No, you gotta cite
You have
this.
to cite.
You gotta
You
cite.
have to cite the reason.
Yeah. The reason is to instruct negotiators.
No, but if we know
I
what
said,
it
you know,
says,
Huh?
if I understand correctly, if we know what it says, which is not a guarantee, but if we know what it says, why would he have to cite the cite the
Well, I think
Well,
they're saying the statute says you have to, which means
Because
that.
there's-
Oh, does it?
Statute says you have to.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's like
And there's
Mother
case-
Mary.
So I guess
Case law that elaborates on that. I guess probably the best way is to invite the people who are not members of the board to leave the room for a few minutes so we can talk.
Well,
Let's just leave it at that.
we're being recorded and
Yeah,
we're
it's
being
recorded.
broadcast on Facebook.
Okay.
So you
We know that they don't.
Right.
So we would have to recess and put you someplace else.
You can only invite your
I
friends.
understand.
I did not know it entailed this and I render my apologies to all.
Well, can I ask a question? Do we need to actually decide what the letter says here? Or can Chairman Seeler drafted and then circulated among us.
That causes other issues.
Right, but I believe
Such an
that
open
we've had pretty robust conversation about what the issues are. The chairman has heard all of them. I think especially if he works with our council, that they would be able to boil those down into a letter. Whether or not, I mean, they know what the priorities are, whether or not they're all, we're gonna die on a hill for this issue is probably not what matters at this point, because that's the point of a negotiation. We would,
And anyway, it's just kicking off the conversation.
But is there an interest to, approve the agreement in principle with the exception of the funds left for the board to operate? That would narrow it down to a specific area. We've had, some board members express that that's what they're concerned about. In fact, I think almost everybody has said that they're concerned about the money, or are there other things in here
As I hear it,
we'd like to leave open?
I think the issues that people have spelled out were the money, and the assurance on the part of the council that they're asking us to do a plan, which we may be excited to do, but we need to know that council has in mind a robust cooperation in developing that plan. Because they may not be interested, but that's what I hear us, is that it's harder to get to success if they don't know what it is that they're asking us to do. Am I understanding that correctly?
So how would that be memorialized? I mean, do we want a letter of intent from council to negotiate this, or to work with us on this? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, the thing is, because we haven't had a negotiation, we don't know what's in their mind.
Yeah, well.
As written right now, we could not talk to them at all until September and then give them a plan. Which we could do, but we've been saying the only way to do it properly would be to actually have a pretty steady workflow with the council.
Some sort of working relationship.
And I don't think there's anything within cooperation loan agreement, the amendment, that precludes you from having communication with council in the future at a study session or anything like that. I'm not saying we don't wanna see you until September.
that's true, but the attitude has been, we didn't wanna see you till October, and here's a non-negotiated document that doesn't make any provision for starting this process.
No,
So I understand the agreement doesn't prohibit it, but I wanna see a step from council that says this is going to be worth your Thursday nights.
Reed, I think the problem we're having, I think the vast majority of this is, the city council has, in all honesty, the city council and the mayor did not communicate with this board until I became chair and I reached out to them to talk about how does this work? How do we work together to figure out how we move forward? And honestly, that communication ceased 3 to 4 months prior to this agreement put forth. I'm sharing that with the entire board so they know where I'm coming from. So I'm having a lot of problems with this. Again, when we met for the breakfast, we were going to negotiate. That means both sides sit down and come to some agreement as to how this goes forward. This is being dictated to us what they want. Well, however they did it, it's fine, but it's not a negotiation. It is, here it is, take it or leave it. We don't wanna take it or leave it. We wanna do what they said they were going to do, which was negotiate it. We had a council member who said, I will serve as the liaison for this board, who did not attend 75% or more of our meetings or study sessions. So he could not go back and report back to city council or to the mayor what we were doing. Many of our study sessions were not recorded. Unless that somebody was sitting here and listening to us, they couldn't tell anybody what we were doing, how we were progressing. That concerns me. I wanna know with this new council and this new mayor, that we are in a partnership to make this succeed. If they don't want it to succeed, and because there's 3 new members and there's a new mayor, they may have to take a different tack, let us know now, not in September.
You're asking for a revote. That's what
I'm
you're
not asking for a
for.
remote, no, all I have to say is, okay, yes, we agree to sit down and talk to you about this. We agree to have a study session, hear your concerns, and negotiate this agreement. They may choose to say, you know what?
Right.
We don't like what you're saying, we're done with you. That's basically what the city council that was seated 4 years ago did with the lift board that was there. That's why you had 5 of the members resign. If the city council this city council wants to make that same mistake, in my opinion, and cut off their nose in spite of their face, they can choose to do that. But we are volunteers. We come here in good faith, doing the work that we've been doing. We put in extra time this year to progress this thing forward. We're asking city council to honor their word, or the previous council's word, to negotiate how we move forward, to have a conversation.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's unwise for us to take kind of a hostile tone with council. Because what we're doing is saying, you guys had a bad liaison, you didn't talk to us, yada yada. Why didn't we say, hey, look, we need a different liaison? Why
I did
didn't
ask for
we-
that, I did ask for that, and I was told it wasn't important.
And then during most of the time, we were stuck in administrative
We were.
spin cycle. So there wasn't really much to talk about. But now council has, they gave us the go, figured out how to do something in the spring. We came back and we made a presentation to them. They developed an agreement that we are not super happy with our participation in, but they gave us an extended life. This says we will work with you. Now, this council is, as I understood, still bound by this for a certain amount of time. I mean, they could vote tomorrow on something, but can they vote tomorrow to do away with us, or is this, is that agreement that they voted on last month, or earlier this month? No, it was last month. Binding on the existing council. If we pass this, I believe it is, but I'm not the attorney. There are 4 attorneys in this row. I'm the only one doing it.
Currently, right now, I mean, I will say there's a termination agreement within cooperation and loan agreement that only requires either party to give 30 days written notice, so.
So we're out.
I mean,
again, I don't hear those things as problematic to me because I'm not here to advocate for the existence of Lyft. I'm here to advocate for what I think will make Lyft as constituted now the most successful, and if they give us a different set of cards, then I will play with those cards and try to make it as successful as possible. But I don't think it's hostile to go to city council and say, we don't like this agreement, we wanna negotiate it. That is adverse, certainly, but it's also expecting them to be adults about it.
So is your problem money?
It's money, and then it's also what assurances, what plan do we have to know that we're going to be able to move forward and have a prayer at being successful. Because I'm not gonna come back here every month and just guess at what city council wants and then show back up in September and find out, oh, we were asking you to do this, not this. That's what I want.
And I hear what you're saying, Joe, and what we may do then, maybe we say, this is what we'd like as touch points. This is, we'd like to request X number of meetings, or that our liaison takes such and such a role, or set a structure instead of being ambiguous about it. We don't wanna have just something that's broad. If the problem is money, let's say money. If it's the touch points, let's say touch points. But let's identify specifically what we wanna take a look at, because we don't wanna say to them, we're mad about our liaison. I think I'm over that. I'm over that. We need to swallow that candy. And move on.
So to get to your question as to what my issues are, how this loan repayment is structured. We're not dealing with in refunding this money, we are not dealing with the expenses that the board previous to us incurred for the 3 zones that were repealed. We are refunding the total amount of money we collected from those areas. I have a problem with that. There was work that was done that could be fairly charged against that money, and it should be. Secondly, the other thing I'm having problems with is we're going down a path that the property owners, the taxpayers said, we don't have an issue with this. We have an issue with this large parcel on the north end of this property. And they're disregarding what the property owners and citizens of this city have said that they want us to address. That's what to Carol's point, that's what we're supposed to be addressing is blight. I'm not saying we disregard that we don't pursue infrastructure as part of that, but to just basically say we're not even gonna look at this. I mean, they leave a little loophole there where we can, but if we start going, if we get a phone call from that property owner says, okay, we wanna talk to you, and we go down that pathway, and in September, we don't complete the work that we've been charged to do, are we gonna be repealed and done away with because we didn't do that? Again, it gets to the point where it has to be a clear understanding that this is a partnership, that if we change tack on what we're doing and how we're operating, that we're in alignment with what city council wants. I don't think we're in alignment. We're not in alignment with what the property owners are asking for. We're not in alignment with what I've said we're gonna try to do, is to make this area better. That's where my problems are. Money is part of it, but also the direction we're going, that we've been charged with.
We can't force Columbine Square to come to the table, but if they do, we need to have that door open, and I think it is, but if the board feels that needs to be clarified, then we can clarify it. I don't think there was any indication that if, based on my casual conversations with people, that if Columbine Square picked up the phone, that the first thing is direct them to community development to see if it's, within the umbrella of that, but we can certainly be turned loose. But if you want clarification, that's reasonable, but I just really caution about opening this up too much to where it becomes a major point of discussion and you open the whole thing, because I don't know that it would turn out well. And I just am arguing, and your point's well taken, to give us the best chance of success, Joe, but I think in order to succeed, we need to be in existence. And we need to be able to structure the parts that will help us do that.
My fear is we will move forward, and if city council isn't committed to our success, and if we need help from Public Works, and we reach out to Public Works and we get no response, because somebody, city council or the mayor or the city manager didn't say, address this, because their plates are full. I mean, they've got a ton of stuff to, I get it, But if that's not a priority, when we get there in September and we walk in and we say, we don't have anything, because what do you want us to do? Again, I don't have real clarity on how we get to addressing what they want us to address. Especially when their history has been, we've not gotten the support from city staff that we need in this area.
Okay, so you've laid out, I think everybody's laid out kind of their issues here. Is there much else to talk about on this, or should we just make a decision?
There's a motion on the table.
There's a motion on the table.
The motion was
The motion is
to authorize.
Authorize
Yeah.
this agreement.
No.
No, I'm sorry.
Authorize
To
to
table it,
to
to
write a
table
letter.
it.
We already,
Let's have
Oh, yeah,
Colleen,
I'm sorry.
can
We
Colleen,
tabled it.
where are we?
We already
Colleen?
tabled, okay.
Yeah, we tabled.
What's the motion, I'm sorry?
So the motion now from Board Member Henderson, seconded by Board Member Rychecki, was to authorize the chair
Okay.
to write a letter to council regarding possible renegotiation of the agreement.
Can I further complicate it? So when you do a motion to table, you have to motion to table to a date certain. So we actually need a date from which this board will take back up that motion that was tabled. Sorry.
How about
In my
December
view-
12th?
In my view, that
I mean,
just
we're gonna-
invalidates the motion and we're back to where we were, where we rejected the agreement. So I don't know if we need to have a motion to table.
Yeah, the motion to table that I had put on the floor was to table it, and I said I couldn't do a date certain, but at a time after the chair has communicated with council and there's some action as a result.
Yeah, but my question is, even if that was an invalid motion, practically, what does that mean for our ability right now to decide the motion on the table?
Can we table until tonight? In other words, can we because can we table, have this discussion on other stuff, and then take it back up again?
So you're essentially wanting to motion to table indefinitely.
Well,
No,
the
that-
motion's
that
already
motion's
passed to
gone.
table. That's already been done.
And I made it clear it
Is that a
wasn't
proper
indefinite.
I'm just saying, as far as the motion to table, it should have had a date certain, or it should have been.
And what I'm saying is, okay, fine, then it wasn't a valid motion, so let's move on.
So what would that mean?
That
So
means-
where are
What's
we?
going on, Reed?
That means that we voted down the agreement.
Go down to agreement,
So
the
now
other
we have
motion
to-
does
Okay,
not
so-
count, hang on, it doesn't count, that whole discussion ended. There's a new motion on the table to authorize me to communicate with city council. So let's call the motion and vote on it, and then if there's another motion after that, we can entertain it. So, roll call please.
Chair Styler,
Yes.
Vice Chair Christensen,
Yes.
Board Member Brijak,
Yes,
Board Member Henderson, Board Member Hopping,
Yes.
Board Member Areno,
Yes.
Board Member Rychecki.
Yes.
Thank you. Have fun. So the next item on the agenda, unless there's another motion,
could we do some, could we review what we just did, this, through the course of this?
we rejected Jack's amendment, we rejected the agreement, we accepted me contacting city council.
Okay,
That is it,
We're on the wild frontier now.
yes.
I would like to restate something just for the record, that, and correct me if I'm wrong, the board was not objecting to most of the agreement. There were specific pieces in here that we would like to participate in, but we are, ready to move forward, provide, with our job.
And that is the next item, agenda item.
Okay.
And along that is hiring an executive director.
Chair Styler, before we move on,
Yes.
I just wanna ask our attorney something.
Who's attorney? Lift's attorney or the city's attorney?
City's attorney. Since we're determining that Board Member Brijak's motion to table is invalid because there was no date certain,
It either needs to be a motion to table indefinitely
or to a date certain.
or to a date certain.
Correct, but since
It's one
there
or the
was no date certain, it basically is invalid.
So you can reconsider, am I right that you
Well,
can
couldn't we make a
reconsider?
friendly amendment?
You can reconsider a motion within the same meeting, so, right?
But we'd have to set a
you
date.
have to have
Because
whoever
we
voted
still-
against it.
And put a
Because
date on it.
without that being valid, we still have the main motion floating that hasn't been voted on.
The main
But not-
motion was turned down.
Actually, it wasn't, it was
No,
tabled. I
it's
guess.
never
been voted on.
So-
Tabled, you're right,
So
you're right.
if the table motion were invalid, then
So Reed, I would look to
we
you
could
for
withdraw that and we could vote down
Just-
and
Just do a new motion to table indefinitely based upon Councilmember Seiler acting on the previously passed motion to contact city council.
Does someone want to make that motion?
So moved.
Second,
You seconded?
I'm asking you second, I'm asking for a second. Cindy?
second. Jason.
Okay, okay. Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Hiring of an executive director. Joining us is Noel Mink, thank you.
I'm sorry you had to suffer through all this.
She's given us a job description, is more or less laid out, with my review of it is for a full-time position. It kind of also lists out what we're looking for. It was mailed out. Oh, I'm so,
I still, I'm.
was it going out to everybody?
I'm not getting it.
Do you have the handout?
I did bring handouts, cause I wasn't sure how that
Well, it should have been in the
worked,
packet, but
if
that's
Brandon-
okay. It should have been, it's fine. Just,
Okay.
if you can pass that out.
Sure.
And,
Thank you. Glad you could come tonight.
Do something.
are we keeping you awake? So in reading through this, this is for a, basically a full-time position, which we are not looking to do. If we were to move forward, we had to do this contract, and I'm just wondering, given, comments that Mr. Murray had earlier, if he may, does he think, I guess the question is, do you feel you may have some individuals that we may just reach out to that do this kind of work on a part-time basis that we could possibly circumvent posting, and we can just set up interviews with those individuals to see who might fit for this?
Yeah, I have some idea. There are some people that I would call to say who might be interested in a part-time work in urban renewal, just on a consulting basis to, and could probably get the phone numbers of other people to,
Okay.
but yeah, there are networks out there that we could tap into and set up some candidates pretty quickly.
Okay.
A lot will depend on the job description and the extent, because, you know, based on the earlier discussion, this may or may not be a long-term commitment.
That's called part-time.
As was my understanding as well. But yeah, I think it would be worth talking to some people.
We would need to have some kind of a job description for them so that they know what they're recruiting.
Correct.
Are you suggesting that we not go through the city, or we just take the candidates that Mr. Murray's going to send our way and have them go through the proper channel within the city so that they can manage all of the slew of applicants?
Well, I guess the question to Noel is, I mean, you know, how much in this process can you help us with? Cause my concern is, you know, when we tried to do the whole lawyer thing, you know, we posted it, went through that whole thing, and that was not successful. And it wasn't until, who was it that reached out?
Ken Feldman called me.
Ken Feldman reached out and helped put a word in for us, and, you know, we got Mr. Murray on board. I'm thinking doing a posting on a part-time position or a contract position could be not, you know, I don't know if those individuals would know, if we to see the posting, we may be more strategic in reaching out to 2 or 3 or 4 individuals that can come up and invite them in to have a discussion with us and see if it fits. You know, we could forward this, what you put together, as a talking point or something else that Mr. Murray may have that you.
There's the CML has a jobs posting downtown Denver, downtown DCI, Denver, Downtown Colorado Inc. Circulates an email, seems like every week, of open positions and a lot of consulting positions. So those are probably the two that, in terms of posting, I think would be useful to post. Because the people that you would be interested in would probably be looking at least at those 2 places.
I'm sorry, sir.
I was gonna say the city's offered the help of human resources to do this, and based on, as you refer, the fact that we kind of stumbled through the attorney hiring, we've got a lot of talent sitting here at the table that I think we ought to
So yeah,
use.
I would say that the Human Resources Department for the City of Littleton's changed a bit and we're really focused on strategy. And it's my intention that we would do a full court press on this, knowing how important this position is, knowing also that there's some challenges in hiring and finding the right person, right? If the February 1st is still a hard date for us, that holidays are difficult, we would definitely wanna post that this would be a 1-year term through the end of December, so that we're clear on that expectation up front. We can put in the posting things like last quarter we would discuss renewal of a contract. But certainly when we do this, we have the job description, which could easily also be used as a scope of work if you wanted that, more of a consulting role. But we would take this, we would post it on our website, which feeds to 10,000 different job boards. Some of those include diversity, so you'd get a wide slew of people taking a look at it. We would also be networking, we would do direct calling, so if we receive names from anyone, we would take the time to call them directly, talk to them about the job posting, encourage them to apply, answer any questions that they may have. So, we would be able to customize this recruitment to really do a full court press to try and find the right candidate for it. So really for you guys, the most important piece is this job description. Does it encompass everything that you would want in there? And then of course, there's some benefits to this, right? It's not full-time work. So it could be flexible, it could be agreeable to someone who has time but doesn't want a full-time job or wants to supplement. So there is flexibility for that person, which is really ideal for a lot of candidates. So there is some really great features about this position as well. So we would definitely highlight all of those things and do the proper advertising on specific industry websites that may also have the candidates. So we would do our very best to try and find a pool of candidates. And I've kind of outlined a recruitment strategy. The compensation is, you're not bound to that. We just did the market analysis to say, this is currently what's happening out in the marketplace. So if you paid a lot more and wanted to lead market, you may get a different type of candidates, or you may get a lot of applicants. Not saying that they'll always be the best, but money's always enticing. If you determine to pay lower than what market is, know that could be an additional challenge. Not necessarily insurmountable, but I think the lower you go, maybe the more insurmountable it might come. But this is just giving you a snapshot of what market is looking like out there. And we have it in both the annual and then the hourly rate, so you could see, right? I mean, obviously if you're 15 hours a month or whatever that might be, you would pay them by the hour. Or they may ask to say, 15 hours, I want this much a month, and that's certainly in your purview to negotiate a contract however you would like to. There are some questions that we would need some feedback on, is this person gonna report to the whole board, or is there a contact that they would be interacting with, for day-to-day direction? Or do they save that up and kind of wait and come to a meeting like this? That those might be some questions that applicants might wanna know, so maybe we would wanna include that in our job posting. Would they have any support staff available to them? And then really about the recruitment process. Sometimes a hiring authority says, give us the top 5. And so we would really wanna understand what a top 5 looks like to you, or a top 3. So you can articulate partly through the job description or just emails to me, or I can come back and hear more. I'd probably bring the recruiter who's gonna be focused on this, so we can really understand what that means to you, both in technical skill, interpersonal skills, leadership skills, so that we can screen that. Or you may say, we wanna see everyone. And so then the people, when I say everyone, is who meets the minimum qualifications, because obviously you don't wanna interview people who don't meet a minimum qualification. And then this board can take a look at all of those applications and narrow, and then we're here to support you if you'd like to make your own phone calls, schedules, or if you'd like us to reach out and do that, we're here to assist you in any way that you would need it. Just said a whole lot. I know I talk fast sometimes, so please, if there's any questions you might have.
So a couple things, the position would for day-to-day stuff would report to the chair. I think that's the way it was set up before. That I also want, in any posting, that the expectation is that they would have to attend our meeting, every meeting and study sessions. It should be assumed, but I don't like
Or
to leave
articulate it,
those
right.
things out there where, and then put in there our in the posting generally meets the second Thursday of the month, at 6:30, in the address and everything. Just so they know what's expected. You have here the prefect consultant was paid $130 an hour. Is that what Lyft was paying the person 4 years ago? Okay. So what is your is your research showing that that's still within range or?
Yeah, there's, within range, so, it's actually a little bit high for some of what we're seeing. The 109 to 205 is where we're at, where we're seeing current jobs being posted. When we look at other, right,
They're
full-time,
full-time.
so you break that down by the 2,080 hours to get an hourly rate to it. So the 130, I think, would still be acceptable. I think you have some wiggle room in there that we could post, a tight range to give clear expectations. It'll fall somewhere in this range.
What is appropriate in this kind of a circumstance, just to leave it open and say, hey, it's gonna be anywhere from 10 to 40 hours a month? Or would is it more appropriate to agree on a rate that about 20 hours a month, which I did the math and it's like $3,000 or something, but
Right.
What's the appropriate way to do that?
Yeah, I would, if you have an estimate on what you think folks may work, so if you're thinking generally 15 hours a month, I would encourage you to say, maybe 10 to 20 hours a month in there, so you have some wiggle room with the candidate, cause some months may be heavier and some months may be lighter. I'm not intimately familiar with the work that you're doing, but
Will candidates who do this kind of work be expecting some sort of a guaranteed minimum? Or is that?
I think that would be your discretion. It may be a negotiation tactic that they ask from you.
And I'm not adverse to these things, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, it definitely can be a negotiation tactic for sure. If that's something that the board is agreeable to, we could have soft language in there that says with
They're not
the,
watching on Facebook.
right, with the associate, with the, with the selected candidate, we would review pay, which may include hourly or a guaranteed minimum. So we could put it softly in there where it doesn't bind you to it, but could be a point of negotiation. I mean, that could be you could withhold that, and then if you don't get the candidate pool you're looking for, we could repost, and that could be like a secondary strategy. If that's a lukewarm for everyone, you could use it up front, you could use it as a secondary strategy. It may be attractive to candidates working part-time.
My thought, I don't know what the market is for this kind of work, but if it's like the job market in general, then it makes more sense to put that out in front, at least as something that we'll negotiate based on experience and
I wouldn't object to it, and if it were me,
attractive as
I
possible.
would want the guaranteed minimum and the company would probably come back and say, okay, this is also a guaranteed maximum. And it's almost like a retainer, basically.
I would concur with you, sir, that the job market, you wanna make your best effort first. Sometimes you have to go out and repost and it leads to questions. And sometimes it's through no fault of our own. Like we possibly posted during the holiday season and we wanna just refresh the job posting, so we're reposting. That's difficult sometimes to articulate in the job posting, so people say, why did they repost, So there is this question, what's happening, what's going on there? So anytime,
Basically, what's wrong with this job?
Yes.
Right.
That nobody applied
Right.
and they didn't get anyone that they could hire.
and so, forgive me, I'm unclear if the February 1st is still a hard date. If it's not, you may wanna consider waiting till after the holidays to make that very best effort. If it is still a date that we're really aiming towards, then I would like to post it as soon as possible.
Is that a recommendation by you to postpone till after the holidays?
If it wouldn't be harmful to you,
Don't break anything, we already tabled.
Yeah, we are.
I don't wanna add any harm, but if it isn't gonna do anything else. I think that it's a worthwhile recommendation. I just struggle with postings during the holidays. You just don't get the traffic, we don't get the views on the jobs. We see all that in our system and it just really can go down during the holidays. So if it's available to have that option, you may wanna even post it January 1st, and get it.
So here's how I would recommend we move forward. I agree with you that, the holidays, unless you're in retail selling something, it sucks for everything else, housing, employment, whatever, I get that. I would still, again, we're committed to work with city council to move forward with what they would like us to do. So I would recommend that we post this as soon as possible with a closing date the second week of January or something like that. I don't know, I would leave it open as to when the start date would be. If we get lucky and, we start talking to somebody the third week of February or January, we're all just blown away by somebody, negotiate, and they could still start by February 1st. But I would leave the start date kind of open or negotiable or whatever. Some city council members may take what we've done tonight as, as we don't wanna work with them, that's not it. But I think there are some challenges and we have to recognize that. But we wanna work forward and get this, I think we should post this as soon as possible with a closing date reasonable after the holidays, a couple weeks afterwards, so that we do get a respectable. And you and I can talk over the next few weeks, see how it's going, especially the first week of January, and if there's still no traffic, we can just talk about what the next steps would be, if that makes sense to people.
Would you just keep us posted as you have those conversations so we know what's happening?
Well, part of what the discussion's gonna be is, I'm gonna put on our calendars, some study sessions the end of January and the first week of February to start talking to these candidates. Again, we're working towards what we've been charged with doing. We've got some dates that Colleen and I have already looked at the calendar, get them on our calendar so that if Nicole calls me at February 14th or January 14th and says, I've got 4 strong candidates, we can start scheduling them to come in here and meet with us and start moving this forward.
And I would like to know during this process if it's a dud, if we're not getting any response, or if we're getting, if you could keep us just kind of posted so we know, and I'm glad to know
We
we'll
can
have some
send a
days we can
weekly
block out.
update, if that would be great, I can send it to you, sir, and then you can
That'd be
disseminate
great.
it, or I can send it to everyone, and then
If you've got like a dashboard, you can say, hey, here's what we're getting, here's how many we've already have, and then just a weekly update once we get it posted. That would be great, I can forward it on to the rest of the board so we kind of know where we're going.
Will that come from staff?
yeah, perfect.
Sorry?
Yeah.
I think it ought to come from staff so we avoid the sunshine issue.
Well, I would just blind it, I would, or as long as you follow the protocols, and if you don't, not sure, check with Reed, I'm sure he'll tell you how to send an email so you don't violate.
Just providing updates as to the status of the search.
Right, we had this many hits, this many people applied, of those people, there's 3 that meet minimum qualifications. Just an update on,
We can have that discussion, how we do that.
I can work with Reed, certainly.
And I just wanna add from a budget perspective, you do have 14,400 in the 2020 budget appropriated, so there is some funds available to fund this contract person. So depending on what hourly rate and what hours you intend for this person to work, there may be a budget amendment needed in the future.
Correct. So anything else on this job description or direction or comments or thoughts?
I think this is a wonderful presentation. Do we need a motion or?
I don't think we
Need a
need-
motion?
Yeah.
No.
Let's go.
What other,
Will we have time to come back in January to talk about whether or not we're gonna have Nicole, Noel give us the top applicants? Or, you know, when are those decisions gonna
We can make that decision now, if we get, you know, where's the cutoff? Do we wanna see 3 or 4? If we get 15 response, let's just say we get overwhelming response. I don't think we wanna sit down and go through 15 people. And I think Nicole and her staff could probably do a good job of saying, you know, somebody who only has a year of experience doing this versus 3 or 4 that may have 5 or 6 years, they could easily weed those out for us and give us the top. I don't like being more than 5. 4 is optimal for me. When I go through
I
this.
would, yeah, I would also not be opposed to the chair having a preliminary part in that conversation with that individual, cause this person's gonna have to have a good rapport with him more than anybody on this board. And if he has the time to help narrow it down to the 3 to 5, then
That would maybe be the challenge, okay.
and I think you can discuss that with Noel and decide what you guys think best.
Okay.
So 3 to 5 to bring back to this board is the direction that I'm hearing.
Yes.
And then we can work on scheduling that. Of course, we get you applications in advance. I can certainly also provide recommended or optional interview questions. I don't know how this panel would like to devise interview questions. But certainly I can provide interview questions. As we do some phone screening, we may say, here's some things we recommend that you ask about, things that piqued our interest or certain experience that really came out or concerns we may have. So we may say, here's some general questions, and for specific candidates, provide some additional thoughts of consideration. I'm happy to provide that if it's something that you would like. Or you can develop your own questions, and
No, I
that
think that would
certainly
be,
is okay too.
that would be good. You know, cause when we went through the other process, our subcommittee of lawyers drafted us some nice questions, and they were our subject matter experts at the time.
Joe.
No, don't put that process on me.
So anyways, yes, that would be wonderful.
The other question, just because we saw what happened this time, if we get to a point where we are discussing salaries and negotiating, can we have the process nailed down for?
Executive session, yes. We will. I will get with one of the attorneys and have that language on hand so that I can spew it forth if it has to, when it comes forward.
Well, I would suggest there's no conflict on that one. Let's have our city attorney do it because he knows the city regs and save the money. That's my.
We will,
You can advise.
yes, we'll get it. That's not a conflict of interest that we can get that, unless Mr. Reed sees otherwise. But anyways, so anything on this the thing?
Let's move on.
Would you like to see the draft posting before it goes out? In NeoGov, we can generate a draft posting so you can see what it looks like prior to. Would you like to see that and approve that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then I'll also, when it goes live, we'll send out that email address if you wanna post it on your social media accounts or share it with anyone who you think may have interest. We'll share that link with you also.
When you do that, will you also send it to Cindy? I'd like her to look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's got experience in that area.
Great,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Okay, so that ends that one. Nicole, thank you very much for staying with us this evening and
Sure.
doing this work and the work you're gonna do for us.
Absolutely.
It's appreciated.
Thank you.
The last thing, which given our earlier discussion, we have a resolution 03/2019 to amend our LIP budget, which was based on the agreement that did not pass. So,
So is the best thing to table this?
Well,
That was for a public hearing, so I would probably just make the motion to deny whatever is less confusing for you and vote accordingly.
so do I have a motion to accept the amended budget?
so
Second,
Second.
any discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion, roll call vote please.
Chair Siler,
No.
Vice Chair Christensen. No. Board Member Brijak,
No.
Board Member Henderson,
No.
Board Member Hopping,
No.
Board Member Areno,
No.
Board Member Rychecki.
No.
Motion fails, thanks. So the next item is next steps, we're gonna have a discussion on that, I think we've thoroughly discussed that this evening. If no one else, does anybody have anything on that issue?
You said you have some dates?
Oh, yes, sorry, thank you, oh, and Nicole, did she,
No one.
Noelle, did she leave? Okay. Yeah, let me back up, I'm sorry. So, we have January, so we meet on the, was it January 12th? Or something like that, or January,
Let me pull my calendar up.
trying to pull my calendar at the same time. So we meet January 9th. So the posting would probably close the week of the 13th. So right now, we have the room available, we could do either Wednesday the 22nd or the 23rd as a study session to meet with any potential candidates. Also, we have the 29th and 30th, which those dates are Wednesdays and Thursdays. And then I'd also tentatively like to put something on the February schedule, the first week of February, the 3rd and 5th. Are there any conflicts, or preferred dates for any of those? So the 22nd or the 23rd,
23rd could be a problem.
does anybody have a problem with 22nd? Okay, so let's put that tentatively, if we have candidates to talk to, we'll meet here at 6:30 on the 22nd. The following week, the 29th or the 30th, would anybody know of any conflicts there? So why don't we just go with the 30th on Thursday then? If we have candidates, we'll meet with them on that date. And then the last one we'll set up for now is February 3rd or 5th,
Which is a Monday and a Wednesday.
Monday and a Wednesday.
I have a hearing the 5th and the 6th.
So with the 3rd, would that Monday the 3rd work for everyone? Great, we'll pencil that.
Okay.
Based on, again,
Jazz got a problem.
No, Monday I can't participate.
What about everyone else?
everyone else can.
Well, do it on, I mean, there's, you know, a 90% chance the hearing I'm talking about won't even happen.
Okay, so we'll do it for the 5th.
Yeah.
Alright, okay, that's it, alright, thank you, appreciate that.
Okay.
So we'll go with the 5th. Again, if we don't have candidates or there's some issues with that, I'll cancel them as they get closer. I will not, I'll try to make sure everybody has notice. But right now, we'll have that on the calendar so we can move forward if we have candidates available.
For the 5th.
For the
But
5th,
not-
yeah, so we've got the 22nd set up, the 30th, and February 5th
And 6:30.
at 6:30 in this room.
Correct.
Okay. Alrighty, reports. Carol, you have anything to report?
I wonder if everybody's gotten their email, this transition. No, it's not just me.
No.
I don't know what email I'm not getting, but I have started getting City of Littleton email copied to my
Well,
Gmail.
what I did when I sent out the packet, because I know with our recent conversion to Microsoft Office 365 and Outlook, not everybody's access converted.
Okay.
And so you have to be using Outlook now to access
Oh,
your
Yeah.
email.
Yeah.
Chances are you are going to run into issues and will have to talk to IT
yes, ma'am.
help desk. They'll have to reset your password because passwords didn't transfer over. When I sent out this packet the last time,
Thank you for doing that, by the way.
I sent it to both your personal emails and your city, just because I knew there was going to be an issue
That's
and I
good.
wanted to make sure that you were getting the information.
So we're all calling.
And so,
Yeah.
I've already done that.
And I did
Let's
it
set up a
today
time.
and they can't get the problem resolved either.
Right,
yeah,
I
so,
gotta come in.
so I would urge you to call the IT help desk. And if you need that number, I'm happy to give it to you. And hopefully they can walk you through it, but you might have to bring your device in.
Yes, ma'am.
that's great,
bring the iMac in, that's perfect.
Well, I thought it might be a Mac
Do you
problem.
have an iMac?
Of course.
I mean, did you get it from a museum? Like where did that's awesome. Is it purple? Like the big?
iMacs are this big, you can
Yeah.
read blueprints on them.
Alright,
Kevin, one other
Yes.
question. Our membership expires January fifth, so there are 2 members whose terms expire. So
Would be me.
I think it's
That's
just
the other
a
option.
I thought it was February.
I think
January 6th is when the new term starts.
Council ought to have that on
I have that someplace, I'll have to find it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you might
I will
wanna
I will
with
talk to Jerry about
Yeah.
that, thank you
for
for
everyone,
that.
but lift,
Okay.
lift for.
So Cindy's and Joseph's is
I
up.
don't know why, I think that's by state statute.
Since we're on that subject, Cindy, do you wish to continue?
Yes.
Joseph? Okay,
Um,
I just will pass that along to
I'm not gonna quit now.
everybody.
They may not want me to.
Cindy, do you have any?
No.
Okay, Jason? Bill?
Just quickly, I think in the future, when we have city staff here to present a relatively short report, we ought to move them up to the front of the
Yeah.
agenda, because they have a lot of meetings.
Yeah, good point.
I
And
do-
let's,
I mean, the agenda was set up because I knew the first one had to be talked about before the other two.
okay,
It just, logically, I had to have it that way, just,
cool beans, I'm just saying.
we would have
gotta
talked
think
about the budget without talking about the, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
We would have had a table or something, anyways, so, okay,
But
but yes, I usually do try.
We should send her something.
go somewhere.
Joseph,
No, thank you, everyone.
Jack,
I'm talking out.
okay. Well, everyone, it was a pack-filled evening, thank you for your time, appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.